Well, you can figure this out if you go to any journalism school, right, and talk to any student there. We should get like Fleckus or somebody or Campus Reform to do one of these, sort of man on the street interviews with journalism school students and people studying that major, if they have any, if we go back to campus learning, and ask the question then again of why are you going to journalism school? Why do you want to be a journalist? The answer, I guarantee you, 90%, because I want to change the world. I want to change the world because I want the world to be a better place. I want this, I want that for the world, and I want that power of journalism to get me there. Okay, great, but that's not journalism.
No, that's activism.
That's not.
It's like that. You saw that woman from the AP who got fired,
right?
The pro-Palestinian woman.
Oh yeah.
So this woman gets hired by the AP. Then there's like she starts complaining. There's a right-wing smear campaign against her.
Not just pro-Palestinian, by the way. I mean, she was like the pro-Hamas in some cases.
Like anti-Israel.
Yeah. Very anti-Israel.
But for me even, right? I'm not gonna even play the political argument. I'm gonna tell you why she should have been fired. Period. So whether or not you want to get into her politics or anything like that, there's one simple fact. She gets hired by the Associated Press. There's a bunch of people complaining she's pro-Palestine, she's anti-Israel. And she argues these were past tweets, and the left says they're old tweets, it shouldn't matter. I said, why does she want to be a journalist when she is an advocate for one side of a conflict? What was the point of her trying to get that job? The AP was right to fire her, and they should have never hired her. Someone comes to me and says, hey, I'd like to report on the southern border crisis. I'd be like, I'm down. We could use some reporting. And then I see in their Twitter, it's all just vitriol about Trump and, and kids in cages. I'm going to be like, I don't think you're actually going to report on this. If I want to hire an activist to do advocacy, I will. I want to see a report from someone who's like dry and says, I spoke with the president's administration. Tom Homan said X, Y, and Z, though the activist organizations say A, B, and C. I'll be like, okay, that's reporting. Instead, what's happening is activists are trying to get jobs at news organizations. They've succeeded greatly. And now that she got fired because she's an activist, and the AP said she tweeted after the fact. I looked at her current tweets. Yeah, they're she's retweeting people who are very pro-Palestine. Like, how can anyone expect to get legitimate news from someone who is advocating for an outcome in the conflict? She's going to tell you bad information. But the activists are claiming it's free speech under attack and it's a right-wing smear campaign because they are subversive and trying to inject activists into media because they know if you control the narrative, you control what people have access to. If they don't know the truth, they can't fathom the truth. If the only thing they hear is your propaganda, they will side with you. They've been doing it for a long time, and it's working. This is one of the times they failed, and they only failed. Now, I don't even think they failed because of Ben Shapiro. They're like, it's Ben Shapiro's fault. He was smearing this journalist. Like, oh, well, I mean, the AP said it was unanimous. They looked at her tweets and said, nah, you can't work here. You can't do that.
And the real question is, of course, why did that not come up in the review process and the hiring, right?
So
why are you going to hire that person and not say, hey, what did they put on social media? We're going to talk about a specific issue. We want you to report on this. What's your past work on that? Let's see your reel. If I'm getting someone in, in terms of videos, like, hey, let me see your reel. Let me see your sizzle reel, right? What do you got? What do you got for me? Oh, okay. So you're completely in the tank for this one side. Got it.
Think about how, in my opinion, you'd have to be really dumb to even consider doing this. Let's say this person who is, anti-Israel, pro-Palestine, says, I want to be a journalist and I'm going to go and I'm going to report from this place. It's like, what do you think's going to happen if some of these like very strong zealots of the other side get wind of your reporting? You got AP says, we'd like you to go and interview this Zionist extremist, really out there guy. Street, group of people, they're going through the streets and they're angry and crazy. And then this journalist is going to show up and they're going to be like, we looked at your Twitter history. You think that you're going to engage in propagandizing for one side of a conflict and be able to go and interview the other side? They're going to be like, you're clearly not my friend. First of all, you can't get the interview. So even if it was just activism, but let alone the fact that you might actually be perceived as a belligerent, like actually coming to do them harm. Now, that's mostly true of Antifa and what we've seen in New York and stuff. It's typically not the Israeli groups, the pro-Israel groups that are going around attacking people. So I'll make sure that's clear. But you can't expect to do an interview at all. If a journalist shows up and tries to interview someone on the right.
Well, no, and shameless book plug, but like I just did the Antifa book. It just came out, antifabook.com. But we get into this where Julio Rojas from Town Hall, where he would go and he's at these events and just trying to be there as media. And he's like, I want to just interview people who are part of Antifa, who are trying to, I did this myself in 2017. Andy No is going out there. I hope everything's okay with Andy right now. Of course, know that, he's got a situation.
But was that him?
I don't know for sure if that was him. But
he hasn't tweeted since.
Reportedly there's a situation, put it that way.
Yeah.
Just regardless, hope he's safe. I pray for the guy. But that these Antifa groups, they will get, if they see you filming, regardless of who you are, unless they know, right? This is something that came up when I was in Chaz. And if they don't recognize you and they know you by sight, or they've kind of seen you around the scene before, they, have some kind of an idea of you, or most likely they've been following you on social media. And so you're sort of an approved documenter. They will get in your face. They will put up umbrellas. They will attack you. They will assault you. They will milkshake you. They will, try to push you down concrete steps like they did to me at the Lincoln statue last year. So if you are identified as someone who's seen as a conservative, or even someone who's just not on our team, right, you are pushed out. You are not allowed to do anything with this. And this is actually, so with Julio in his situation, this is in DC, I believe, they actually handed him a list of, if you are going to cover us, you have to follow all of these rules. You can't film something where someone's committing a crime. You can't film anyone's faces if their mask comes off. You can't film if anyone has their phone out. Any of these different things that could possibly identify them, right? And they are setting these. And so the question then becomes, if you are someone who considers yourself a journalist and you're going in and embedding, or at least getting close to these events, are you following those rules? And if you're doing so, then are you taking their side?
Of course.
Yes,
you're working for them. You're licking their feet. I'll tell you a story. I went to Boston, and there was a pro-right-wing thing. I think it was like 2018. And there was a left-wing counter Antifa group shows up. The first thing I have to point out, what were the right-wing individuals holding? They were all holding some kind of object. They were holding shields. What were the Antifa people holding? What do you think?
2x4s.
Clubs, crowbars, bats, 2x4s. And so I'm like, clearly someone's come here to fight and beat people, and clearly someone's here seeking to defend themselves. But something interesting happened. There was an individual who looked like a lefty, but was a journalist, taking pictures of both sides, but was wearing some LGBT pride stuff.
Right. And
they went over to take photos of the right-wing group. A couple guys on the right started screaming, F you, Antifa. And the 3%ers who were there immediately ran up and stopped the right-wing guys and told them to shut up, back off, and let them take photos.
Really?
Yeah. There were several periods where the right were trying to get rowdy, and the 3%ers immediately told them to back off and were screaming at them. So the 3%er guys that were there were just wearing they didn't have any weapons. They were wearing some kind of light tactical gear, but didn't really have much with them. And they were telling people on the right to chill out, back up, get away. So when someone from the left would come over, they would immediately turn around and tell the right to chill out. Well, I think that was the right move, because I'd imagine these guys on the right would pummel one of these Antifa guys pretty bad. They were by themselves walking over, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So what do I see when I walk over to the Antifa side? And I'm not dressed like a right-wing guy. I get a guy swinging at me. He hits my phone a couple times, tries to get in my face, he tells me to hit him. And that's the difference between what happens when you go and try and report on these things. The people on the right, I can walk into, I go back to Occupy Wall Street era. I show up at CPAC. It was like 2012 CPAC. And I'm walking around, and literally nothing. No problems. Nothing happens. People are like, how's it going? Have a nice day. That's it. You show up to one of these Occupy protests. Even when I was down there and half the people liked me, I still had Antifa attacking me. I was physically attacked 3 times in New York during Occupy Wall Street proper. Physically attacked by these people. And they supposedly liked me. So why would a journalist want to be involved in that? You have to basically just tell them, you have to say whatever they want you to say. So you're not really doing reporting.
Well, so I get into this a little bit in my Chaz chapter as well, because when we talked about the journalistic failures that were going on, and actually Chief Carmen Best, who was the police chief that resigned in the wake, and then Seattle in the wake of all this, and has said that it was like a disinformation campaign, because here's what would happen. Is the dynamic was the media would go there, most of the mainstream media would go including Fox News, would go there during the day, right? They would set up, they would have their huge cameras, their huge lights, they would do a hit. And, during that time, you get the day trippers, you get tourists, you get people just there with their kids walking around. And it is sort of generally a sociable atmosphere. People, drugs are kind of, freely going around. There's no police. Remember, that was the whole thing. There was no police for 12 blocks. So then at night, all of those reporters would leave and they would go back to their hotels or go to the bar and drink craft beer or whatever. They'd leave. That's when all of the violence was going on. That's when the black blocs would really start coming out in force. That's when you actually saw criminal gang elements that had nothing to do with the social justice or Antifa aspects of this, but would come in because, hey, there's no cops here, so we can go commit crimes and we can go do deals where we don't have to worry about being caught. That's also where you then got those shootings. There were 5 shootings on 4 separate occasions. All throughout Chaz happened right after I left. And I said, this is going to be a bubbling cauldron of violence. I said that, as we're walking out, I pulled my mask off and we kind of did like a live stream saying, this is going to get bad. Jenny Durkin, who was the mayor, now is not running again, by the way, in Seattle, because I think we know what would happen there. You had people dying. You had people being shot. You had people being killed because, and reportedly the investigation is still open, but a lot of those early reports were that it was the Chaz Security, the John Brown Gun Club, that had actually been involved in some of these shootings because they had this paranoid belief that, and they were very specific about this, that the KKK was about to show up and raid Chaz. Not the Boogaloo Boys, not Proud Boys, they knew who Proud Boys were, but they were all certain that the KKK of Seattle, which apparently they think is a thing, I've never heard or seen anything. We got
to stop using their words. It wasn't Chaz Security. It was terroristic insurgents.
Precisely.
So what we often see with these conflicts is that the left will say it's George Floyd Square. And then what happens is the media shows up and they film the peaceful inhabitants at George Floyd Square, except for, a couple weeks ago when 30 gunshots ring out in the reports.
When it was drive-by shooting square.
Well, exactly. And so we keep referring to these things the way they demand they be referred to.
Well, this is why with the whole Chaz Chop thing, right? So they realized very early on that Chaz was really, really bad branding in their part, right?
Yep.
Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone. And the minute that media narrative got out and people said, wait, what do you mean you've declared yourselves autonomous? You're autonomous from the United States, your own country. Within a couple of days, they get up. No, we're just kidding. We're actually the CHOP. It's just an occupied protest. We're trying to bring back some of that goodwill from, Zuccotti Park and the original Occupy. No.
But what did conservatives do?
A lot of conservatives adopted CHOP. I never did.
I wouldn't even call it
all
Chaz.
The way through.
I wouldn't even call it that.
What did you call it?
A no-go zone.
It was a no-go zone.
That's it. This was a far left extremist no-go zone. You look up the definition of a no-go zone. Look at the standard colloquial understanding. It means a place where the police are reticent to go, or the medical professionals, EMS, police, they don't want to go there because it's too dangerous. Individuals only enter with great personal risk. That's exactly what these places are.
So we actually tracked one of the guys who was a member of this, or at least suited up to join the John Brown Gun Club in Chaz. And Daniel Allen Baker. This is a guy who was later arrested early 2021 down in Tallahassee, Florida. Why? Because he was planning a left-wing armed action at the Florida Florida Capitol, right? Daniel Allen Baker. He goes out there, travels from Florida to Chaz to be this sort of militia security group. Where did he have his training? He's one of these Antifa guys that actually went to Syria to join the battlefield forces of the YPG. This is the Kurdish group that's out there. They're tied to the PKK, who are a terrorist designated group. He's actually out there on the battlefield, but of course, because they were fighting ISIS at the time and sort of more infighting for the Kurdish areas, you get all these stories in Rolling Stone. He's actually in one of the Vice documentaries from Syria talking about how great it is that these left-wing, just true believers are out here fighting for something, fighting for their own land, right? It was almost sort of like they're trying to create this stateless space up there in northeast Syria. He comes back, has the training from the battlefield, has the TTPs. He goes up there in Chaz, and we've got these quotes from him, we've got tweets from him, and he's saying, look, if we really want to have an autonomous zone, we've got to take this to the next level. We need more guns. We need explosives. We need all sorts of things. I'm quoting him, by the way.
Wow.
And we need to take this to the next level because eventually the police are just going to come in here and shut this down. But he was really pushing them to go forward. Now, of course, we know that didn't happen. But that very same guy claims that he was one of the medics involved in one of these shootings. the question is, of course, was he there as a medic or was he there as something else?
Or one of the people that stripped all the evidence out of the vehicle when they pumped it full of hundreds of rounds, killing 2 teenagers.
Precisely.
So
they killed one that time. The other one survived.
The other one survived.
Yeah.
And now there's, I think, a couple lawsuits over these people who were killed. The parents are blaming the city. I mean, the city could have come in and swept it all up, but these Democrat leaders, they favor this stuff.
Right, and it does kind of create the moral question of, do the people of the city, now, do they deserve it? No, obviously not. And this is why I keep telling people, just get out of cities. You just need to be out of cities for a while, because a lot of the people in the cities, you look at places like, I'm from the Philadelphia area originally, they just reelected the DA who's like, let's not prosecute people, let's let people out of jail, Larry Krasner. So he just won the primary, handily won the primary there. So they are voting for this kind of stuff. St. Louis, same situation, right? St. Louis, which is now one of the murder capitals in terms of homicide rate of the United States. St. Louis, right? Who would have thought, right? That would have been, Ferguson. I know you were at Ferguson. And so if they're voting for this again and again, right, the question is this what they want?
Let me ask you a question. So Jack just mentioned there was a guy in this was the Seattle no-go zone with the terroristic insurgents of the far left, and he was talking about how they wanted to escalate things, but it never happened. This guy who wanted violence and explosives, was he prosecuted? Was he locked up? Did the feds come and arrest him? Did they put out his photo and say, please help us stop this dangerous terrorist?
Yes, but not for that. Not until much, much, much later, when he said that he was going to do something at the Tallahassee Capitol in Florida in 2021 for all of his activity. Again, going to the Middle East and training with a terrorist designated group, going to Chaz, being involved in all of this stuff, not prosecuted.
Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. If you want to see the full show, come back to this channel, youtube.com/TimcastIRL, Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., where you can leave comments and super chat, and we actually will read your comments on the show. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and if you want exclusive members-only content, segments you can't get anywhere else, go to timcast.com, become a member, and we even have full bonus episodes. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.